So, have you ever thought about a career as a distillery miller?
I have to admit, it does have a certain appeal. Working in a craft distillery, the smell of grain in the air, being a part of making incredible spirits, there's a romance to it, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And you've sent over some interesting resources about what it takes to be a distillery miller, so we definitely want to do a deep dive on that. What's really fascinating is that there's a surprising amount of depth to this role. It's not just about the ambiance. Distillery millers are absolutely essential to the entire drinks production process.
Right. They're the ones laying the groundwork for all those complex flavors to develop.
I like how you put that. Think about it. You're enjoying a glass of your favorite single malt whiskey. The color, the aromas, the whole experience, it all starts with the miller.
It really does.
Now, our research mentioned tasks like cleaning, grinding, weighing grains. On the surface, they sound pretty straightforward, right?
Oh, those tasks are definitely part of it. But it's the how and the why that really make a distillery miller so important. They need to have a deep understanding of different grain types, their unique properties, and how each one is going to interact with the distilling process, which ultimately influences the final product you get in the glass.
So it's a lot more than just dumping some grain in a hopper and hit and go.
Way more to it than that. Think about it this way. A good baker wouldn't just use any old flour to bake a cake, would they? They think about protein content, texture, all of that to get the perfect crumb.
Ah, I see what you're getting at.
Exactly. A distillery miller looks at grain with that same level of expertise, making sure they have the perfect mash for a smooth whiskey or a crisp gin. They're artists in their own right.
That is a great analogy. They're like the unsung heroes of flavor,
Yeah,
shaping the spirit before it even exists.
you got it. And beyond that, they're the ones responsible for quality control throughout the entire milling process. They ensure consistency and safety. Each batch has to meet very specific standards, and that all falls on the miller.
Okay, so we've got someone with steady hands, a real analytical mind when it comes to the grains themselves. What else? What other skills are we looking at here?
Sensory skills are huge. It's not just about what they can do, it's about what they can sense. A good miller can spot really subtle differences in the grain, maybe an off aroma or a slight difference in texture. Those seemingly tiny details can make a world of difference in the final product.
Wow, so they're like grain whisperers almost. We've definitely established that this isn't just any job. It's a real craft that demands a very unique skill set and a lot of knowledge. But what about the career path itself? Where does someone even begin?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. You're usually starting out as an assistant, really getting your hands dirty, actually getting in there, cleaning equipment, learning the ropes of grinding and weighing the grain. It's a very hands-on apprenticeship.
Really learning from the masters, absorbing all that knowledge.
Exactly. And then as you get more experience under your belt and you're demonstrating those skills, you can move into more independent roles, maybe overseeing a specific stage of the whole milling process.
And that's where the artistry comes in,
Right.
right? You're not just following directions anymore. You're making decisions that are going to impact the flavor profile of that final product.
Right. And for those millers who are really ambitious, they can set their sights on those supervisory or even management positions, leading a team, really impacting the distillery's overall success. And one cool thing, the source material we got from RoleCatcher actually gives some great examples of what a miller's profile might look like at different points in their career.
That's super helpful. So it's not just about the number of years you've been doing it. It's really about the skills and the experience you bring to the table.
Absolutely. And speaking of experience, you had a great question about the job market for distillery millers. Like, is this a very niche career path, or is there some real potential out there? And one of the sources actually cited data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they project that employment for food processing workers, which includes our distillery millers, is going to grow by 6% between 2019 and 2029.
Wow. So that's faster than the average growth they're projecting for all occupations.
It is, and here's something else that's pretty interesting. The craft spirits market is booming right now.
Yeah, seems like everyone's into those small batch, locally sourced drinks.
Exactly. Consumers really love these artisanal products, so that's creating more and more opportunities for skilled distillery millers.
So it's a good time to be in the business, especially if you're passionate about those small batch handcrafted spirits. But of course, any job has its challenges. We talk about the sensory skills, the need for being really meticulous. What about the work environment itself and the physical demands? What can someone expect?
Well, a distillery is a dynamic environment, to say the least. It can get physically demanding. You're going to be on your feet, moving around, lifting bags of grain. Stamina is key.
You can't be afraid to break a sweat.
Right. And there's also the potential for exposure to dust noise and sometimes chemicals. Safety is really important in this kind of setting, so proper training and taking the right precautions are essential.
Makes sense. It's like any skilled trade. You have to be aware of your surroundings and follow those safety rules.
Uh,
What about the hours? Is it a typical 9 to 5 or is it a little less predictable?
it can be a bit of both, to be honest. Distilleries sometimes have these peak seasons or production cycles that require putting in longer hours. You might be working some weekends or evenings. But that being said, lots of places also offer flexible schedules, and they really understand the importance of work-life balance.
So some flexibility and adaptability go a long way.
Yeah.
What other insights did you find about the day-to-day life of a distillery miller?
Well, it's not just about being physically strong. You need mental stamina, too. Remember we talked about quality control? That requires incredible attention to detail. A distillery miller can't just be going through the motions. They have to be completely present, constantly observing, and ready to troubleshoot if something seems off.
It's really a career that demands you be fully present, both physically and mentally. Sounds like there's never a dull moment.
I think that's a good way to put it, and it's part of what makes it so rewarding. Now, you were asking about how someone actually lands one of these coveted distillery miller roles, and you mentioned the resource RoleCatcher.
Yes, tell me more about their interview question database. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about those interview questions they have in their database. What kind of curveballs are we talking about?
So one that really jumped out at me was, how would you ensure the milling process is environmentally sustainable?
Wow. Okay, yeah, that is not your typical interview question. It really makes you think about the bigger picture, doesn't it?
Hmm.
It's not just about making the spirits, but doing it responsibly.
Absolutely. Distilleries are becoming much more aware of their impact on the environment these days. Everything from how much water they're using to their energy consumption. They really need millers who are on the same page, who understand those concerns, and can help them implement sustainable practices.
It's really interesting to see how the industry is evolving and taking on those challenges. What other questions from the RoleCatcher database stood out to you?
Another one was, how do you make sure that the quality of the milled grain consistently meets the distillery's standards?
That seems like a pretty straightforward question on the surface, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
There definitely is. It's about proving that you have a real system in place for quality control, right from the moment that grain is delivered to that final milled product. It's about recognizing even the subtlest signs that something's off and knowing how to fix those problems when they come up.
It's almost like they're a guardian of quality, making sure that high standard is met every step of the way. Attention to detail is essential.
Couldn't agree more. And being willing to keep learning and honing your craft. This is an industry that's constantly changing, with new techniques and technology popping up all the time. Which reminds me, do we have any advice for someone who wants to not just land the job, but really thrive as a distillery miller?
I'm so glad you asked that,
Yeah,
because it sounds like this is one of those fields where you really do have to commit to continuous learning.
you're absolutely right. Going to those industry conferences and workshops is great for networking with your peers, sharing ideas, and making sure you're ahead of the curve.
And probably getting to sample some pretty amazing spirits along the way. But on a serious note, that idea of networking and always looking for new knowledge, that's crucial for success in any career, right?
For sure. And don't underestimate professional organizations like the Distilled Spirits Council. They've got tons of resources, everything from technical guidance to updates on regulations that a distillery miller would find invaluable.
So to sum it all up, it seems like it's about bringing together those traditional hands-on skills, but also having that forward-thinking mindset, always looking for ways to do things better, both in terms of the final product and the process itself.
Exactly. It's such an exciting time to be involved in the craft spirits industry, and the role of the distillery miller is changing right along with it.
Now, before we wrap things up, I do have one final thought-provoking question I'd like to throw out there for both you and our listeners. As automation becomes more and more common in manufacturing, what do you think the future holds for distillery millers? How will they adapt while still holding on to that human touch, that artistry that makes these spirits so special?
That is the million-dollar question. There's no easy answer, but it's definitely a conversation worth having. How do we embrace new technology without losing sight of the traditions and craftsmanship that make these spirits unique?
It's a challenge for sure, but I have a feeling that distillery millers, with their passion and expertise, are going to be leading the way. And all of you listening, if this conversation has sparked your curiosity, if you're thinking about exploring the world of craft spirits from the ground up, maybe you'll be a part of shaping that future too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of distillery milling. Cheers.